Welcome to This Week in Racing, and what a miserable week it's been. Wow. These are strange times we're living in. There's no doubt about it. And it's just weird to think that in some alternate timeline, I would still be in Florida right now. I would have, at the time of recording this video, probably would have just published my 6-hour report on the 12 hours of Sebring. I'd be sunburned, I'd be having a great time, and I'd be, enjoying my work. I have to tell you, haven't really enjoyed my work in the last week. And I'm obviously a lot more positive and happy. In fact, hitting the record button on this video right here has increased my mood significantly. It's nice to kind of get back to some of the old style of stuff in such uncertain times. But I'm going to be real with you guys, and I'm always trying to be real with you guys on this channel to the best of my ability. And if you saw my community tab post a couple of days ago, I've not been taking this too well. And this is not a pity party thing for me. I don't want you guys to feel sad or sorry for me. It's mainly just because this is tough. I mean, this is tough to cope with. And I'm going to tell you these things again, not because I'm looking for sympathy. It's more because, first of all, for my own mental health, it's nice to be able to vent to somebody. And it's nice to have an audience of 45,000 people or whatever that I can vent to. But also probably for some of you guys, because I think a lot of you guys are going to hear similar things. I mean, obviously, my experience is not your experience. I mean, everybody is going to handle this differently. But I do want to talk about this and how it's kind of affected me, this whole situation, because I think it's important to talk about. I mean, this is not going to be the entire episode that I'm going to talk about this, but I do want to touch base and talk about it, and also kind of parlay that into what is this channel going to be in the next couple of months. Hopefully it's not much more than a couple of months, but we'll just have to wait and see there. So when I got back from St. Petersburg, luckily, and here's the crazy thing was, I actually got sick in St. Petersburg, and there was a time where I'm like, oh boy, could this be the COVID-19? And thankfully the symptoms were not consistent. So when I got back, I just, took some ibuprofen or whatever, or cold medicine, whatever you want to call it, got better. But on the plane, because I had some kind of a bug, I actually was deaf for a couple of days. My eardrums closed up, and that was miserable. So that put me in a bad mood to begin with. And then you started to see a lot of the closures, like Long Beach. I mean, that was a crushing one for me. I mean, it sucked bad enough to be in St. Petersburg and have Sebring close, and then also, to be at the racetrack when they're shutting everything down. That was miserable. It was especially miserable because I was so excited to go to Long Beach. I was so excited to see what was going to happen there. And then you also started to see things like Monaco closing down. And then you start to think, okay, what's going to happen in the month of May? And that's something I'll talk about later. But that definitely hurt a lot because, and I don't want to go into this too much, but I think a lot of you guys are aware that my life has not exactly been a bag of roses, especially in the last couple of years. I've really kind of worked out of bad situations through this channel. And having auto racing, even when it wasn't my job, having that kind of out there as a reason to get out of bed in the morning because, hey, I'm excited, even if I wasn't going to races. I mean, now it's like, wow, I mean, I had so many races that I was getting excited. But, you could go, hey, it's only 2 months to the Indy 500. Hey, spring is starting to sprung, and I'm starting to get excited to go to that race. Or hey, there's a great race on TV. It's 24 hours of Daytona in January, Daytona 500 in February. You get excited. It gives you a reason to get out of bed. And so much of my life recently, I've kind of found a great way that I kind of cope with life is kind of having things to look forward to, just kind of placing, even if they're not necessarily goals, they're just something out there, something fun to kind of get you through the day. And so much of that had to do with racing for me that seeing it all go away all at once was just the most crushing thing in the entire world. Now, that being said, I'm feeling a lot better. A lot of people reached out to me, whether it was because of that post or whether it was not, but it was just people, kind of touching base with me. Because I know I've reached out to several of my friends across the globe just to find out how they're doing. And thankfully, I can report that I don't think I know of anybody that's really struggling right now. Thankfully, hopefully that doesn't change. But I know other people aren't that lucky. So I kind of have that to put into perspective, and stuff like that just made me feel a lot better. So I appreciate that. I know there's like the sim racing thing that's going on, and I think definitely this channel will have some sim racing content. Whether I'm hosting races or whether I participate in some races, I'm not sure how that's exactly going to go yet. But, and again, maybe I'll expand on this later. I don't really feel like taking the abuse right now for being contrarian, but I will say that the sim racing stuff, while it's very cool and I think it's great for the sim racers, I'm so happy for them that they get the spotlight. I don't get out of bed in the morning because I'm like, oh man, I can't wait for this sim race. And again, it's no disrespect intended whatsoever. It's just not something to me that is able to replace the real thing. And I think most people will understand that and take that as it is. Again, absolutely no disrespect. And I can't wait to participate in some of these sim races that are going on. But it's just not the real thing. It's just, I credit the people who can actually kind of treat it as a replacement. I really do envy you. So speaking of replacement, what am I going to do for content? Obviously, This Week in Racing is going to be a little bit difficult because there's not a lot going on. I mean, there are some things to talk about. What I could do, and this is just totally spitballing, this is an idea that came into my head just like recently, was maybe I could do it a live show. Maybe add a Patreon tier or something to have a Discord or something where people can come in, I can take calls, and we can just talk about whatever for an hour or so every night and make that This Week in Racing. I don't know. Specifically on the content-wise, what I'm going to do, I know a lot of people, again, have been asking for sim racing. I'll figure out a way to be unique on that because it seems like literally everybody and their brother is doing sim racing right now. I want to have interesting and unique content that people will want to come. So I'll have to think about that one for a little while. But specifically, I want to do historical content. A lot of people have been asking for historical content. So what that would entail would either be also I could do some opinion videos kind of looking forward. I know one specifically that I'm probably going to do like soon is top 10 drivers I'd like to see in the Indy 500 that aren't in IndyCar racing. I think that could be kind of cool. But I floated some ideas on Twitter about like talking about McLaren getting bumped last year, just kind of breaking down how many times they failed going into that. I know I could talk about the split. I know there are split opinions on whether I should do that or not, but I know so many people have asked me for it. And, what better is there to do right now? I was also going to do a video talking about, like the fastest cars in Indy 500 history or the most crazy bumps. I mean, there's some crazy bumps out there that nobody ever talks about, and I'd love to talk about that. So, I mean, there's some cool historical content I can make. So that's kind of what I want to do. I think it'll be able to keep me engaged. Hopefully it'll keep you guys engaged. I definitely want to continue to give you guys or bring you guys content because first of all, I mean, you subscribed and you got nothing better to do right now. Chances are you are confined in your house just like I am. So and of course also to the Patreon supporters who I'm sure you're seeing their names right now. And I've actually picked up Patreon supporters. I don't know why. You guys are just so incredibly generous over the last couple of days. And, those are the people who I really want to make sure continue to get content because, again, this is an unprecedented. I mean, a lot of people will sometimes say, "Oh, well, it's not as bad as World War II." But in terms of our lifetimes, virtually, I mean, I would say 99.9% of the people watching this were alive during World War II. So I want to continue, as long as the internet works, to give you guys the content, even if it's not necessarily the content you subscribe for, the content that hopefully will interest you from a perspective that maybe you've never heard before. I don't know. So with that being said, let's talk about the future of racing and where things are going to go, at least in 2020. So this could be a slightly touchy subject because, again, we don't know all the facts. This pandemic has been completely altering to the world. And I'm not really sure where things are going to go. I think I think best case scenario, we start to turn a corner on this around May, and people start getting let out of their houses in that month. So that gives us like what, 2.5 months of sitting around in hopefully voluntary quarantine. And honestly, I think in a lot of ways, people probably, whether there's a health crisis or not, at least in this country, I think people aren't going to really want to sit around in their houses, or not going to be voluntarily sitting around in their houses for 2 months. Now, things could get really crazy, and you know, there could be some authoritarian measures put in place that might keep people in their houses longer than that. I hope it doesn't get to that point, but there's always a possibility. We're going to be positive here. Let's say that everybody starts to get out of their houses around May. So obviously, I think that means that there's going to be no racing in May. That means the Indianapolis 500. Now, I think many people here will know, obviously, everybody else has talked NASCAR Formula One to death. I think we all know, okay, NASCAR suspended indefinitely. They are iRacing now. And then you go on the Formula One side of things, and they're suspended, I think, already into June. It may be further than that until Formula One gets back, of course, with the kind of, I mean, it's a globalized series. So if things turn a corner here in the United States, and if they turn a corner here in China, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to turn a corner in Italy. So that's where things are going to be difficult for a series like Formula One. A series like IndyCar and even the Indianapolis 500, even for an international event where you have international fans, international drivers, international teams, that's a smaller sample size of people that are going to be coming into the United States. They'll be able to be screened. They'll be able to be tested. So the people that hopefully, if there are still people infected by the virus, they won't get past the border, so to speak. And the race will hopefully be able to go on in June or possibly July. So this is mostly speculation, but I've seen some speculation from, I would say, pretty solid sources on this. I think there's a definite possibility that you get the first NASCAR IndyCar doubleheader, and it's the Brickyard 400 and the Indy 500 back-to-back. I know some people aren't going to like to hear that, but that sounds like it may well be what it ends up being. And kind of thinking about, I've been thinking about this for a while, and if I'm thinking about it, Roger Penske's been thinking about it. Because I think Penske, even before all this crap, I think he thought that he wanted his first Indy 500 to be an absolutely watershed event. I don't think he realized it was going to be this big, because like I think I mentioned when we were in St. Petersburg in the Airbnb, this could be a huge nation-healing event. The Indy 500 could be one of the first big sporting events back from this horrible world crisis. And, you could make it awfully big if you had two major events at the same time. And that would also check a lot of boxes for Roger Penske. Think about this. You already have 400,000 people that are in town for the Indy 500. Let's say you include a ticket to the Brickyard 400 with an Indy 500 ticket, and you just get to sit in your same seat 2 days in a row. Well, suddenly, the Brickyard 400, which hasn't had a full seating arrangement since 2009? Suddenly, you've got a full pumped up crowd for that race, and then they come back the next day for the Indianapolis 500. And if we're kind of operating on the idea that stuff will start getting back going in full around June, maybe you start out with the GP and the Xfinity race to make sure that the aero screens work for the Indy cars and give the fans a preview of what a NASCAR IndyCar doubleheader would be. You run a full week of Indy 500 practice. You do the qualifying, and then when the IndyCar drivers leave to go do their media, you bring the stock cars in. They run a week of practice, and then they run their qualifying on Friday with the final practice for the Indy 500 and the Freedom 100. Could you imagine that? And then you run the Brickyard on Sunday, or Brickyard on Saturday, Indy 500 on Sunday. Sounds like something, first of all, Roger Penske would like. It sounds like something that, hey, NBC would be all over, I'm sure. And I think it would make the Speedway, IndyCar, and NASCAR a bazillion dollars if they did something like that. I don't know. And then you start thinking, well, if that's a success, what happened? What's to say that they couldn't move, years from now, the 600 to July, and move the Brickyard into May? I'm just saying, there's that possibility. So I mean, I want to be positive because this is a very scorched earth kind of deal right now. There are so many things that could happen, and so many things that I'm sure are still going to happen between now and then. It also opens up the world to a lot of possibilities that maybe weren't something that anybody would have even thought about prior to this crisis, because people didn't need to think about one of the biggest NASCAR races and one of the biggest IndyCar races happening on the same weekend. You wouldn't have needed to do that in any other situation, but suddenly now we're faced with that prospect where you're going to have to condense a lot of races all together, and when TV time is at a premium, maybe that's something that NBC just says, all right, we'll set a weekend aside for racing, and the golf and whatever else can take another weekend, whatever, Or maybe you run it during the Olympics in September or late August. When are the Olympics? I never care about the Olympics. I don't know why we take a big break for the Olympics, but I don't know, man. It's crazy. I don't know. Let me know your crazy theories about what's going to happen racing-wise down in the comment section below. I would love to hear them. I would love to get my mind off of some of the stupid crap that's happening in the world right now. And I'm going to make that commitment to you guys as well. I'm going to, hopefully, in the next couple of days, I'll have a new video up. And then I'll start getting into the research that it will take to kind of do some of the more in-depth and interesting historical videos that will be coming down the pipeline. Sim racing as well. Give me some ideas for that that are something that is different, because I think one of the best things I saw in sim racing is the Pooper Sebring, which is literally going on right now, where Dinner with Racers is just doing this absolutely batshit insane race where there's like sprint cars and Indy cars and trophy truck. It's cool. So maybe I'll do something like that, but I don't want to necessarily rip them off either. So just give me some ideas and I'll figure something out. I don't know, but thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart for all of your support. It really means a lot. And hey, you know what? I'm going to be around when the racing comes back, and hey, I'm not leaving either. I'm going to be around when it's not here either, apparently. It's doomsday, but we're all in this together. Let's try to have a good time, and remember to try to treat everybody else as best as you can in the situation. I'll try to live by that a little bit better as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.